to the Way of the Taibhsear. This is episode 27, The Coming of Lugh. This week's Celtic god is Lugh of the Long Hand. Known as Lugh in Scotland and Ireland, and Lugh in Wales, this Celtic sun god's name means Lugh of the Long Hand, and it was given to him because of his skill with the spear. Another title often bestowed upon him is symbolizing, which means he of many skills. He's one of the most important Celtic gods, and the high day of Lunasa, August 1st, bears his name. Lugh is the god of the harvest. He's a solar deity, and the month of August is his sacred month. Lugh is the father of Cuchulainn, hero of the Ulster cycle of stories. Cuchulainn is an Irish hero believed by some to be the basis for the legends of King Arthur. Lugh is the master of all arts and crafts, and in this aspect he bestows skills and talents upon those who seek him. Sunflowers, apples, and plants that bear fruit in early August, including corn, wheat, and rye, are sacred to Lugh. Animals sacred to Lugh include roosters and calves. Invoke Lugh when you wish to improve your skills, or when you are seeking a harvest in your life. If Lugh comes to you, prepare for a period of learning. The Coming of Lugh. Now as to Nuah of the Silver Hand, he was holding a great feast at Taibhsear. One time, after he was back in the kingship, and there were two doorkeepers at Taibhsear, Gamal, son of Fegal, and Kamal, son of Regal. And when a young man came to the door, where one of them was, and bade him bring him into the king. "Who are you yourself?" said the doorkeeper. "I am Lugh, son of Cian, of the Tuatha De Danann, and Evan, daughter of Baelor, king of the former," he said. "And I am the foster son of Taibhsear, daughter of the king of the great plain, and of Echad the rough, son of Duach." "What are you skilled in?" said the doorkeeper, "for no one without an art comes to Taibhsear." "Question me," said Lugh. "I am a carpenter." "We do not want you. We have a carpenter ourselves." "Then I am a smith," said Lugh. "We have a smith ourselves." "Then I am a champion." "That is no use to us. We have a champion before, Agma, brother to the king." "Question me again," Lugh said. "I am a harper." "This is no use to us. We have a harper ourselves." "I am a poet," he said then, "and a teller of tales." "That too is of no use to us. We have a teller of tales ourselves." "Then I am a magician," said Lugh. "That too is of no use to us. We have plenty of magicians and people of power." "I am a physician," he said. "That too is no use. We have Dian Keat, our physician." "Let me be a cupbearer then," he said. "We don't want you. We have 9 cupbearers ourselves." "I'm a good worker in brass." "We have a worker in brass ourselves." Then Lugh said, "Go and ask the king if he has any one man that can do all of these things, and if he has, I will not ask to come again to Taibhsear." The doorkeeper went into his king's house and then told him all that. "There's a young man at the door," he said, "and his name should be Eldonic, master of all arts. For all the things our people of our house can do, he himself is able to do every one of them." "Try him at the chessboards," says Lugh. So the chessboards were brought out, and every game that was played, Lugh won it. And when Lugh was told that, he said, "Let him in, for the like of him never came to Chawer before." Then the doorkeeper let him pass, and he came into the king's house and sat down in the seat of knowledge. And there was a great flagstone there that could hardly be moved by 4 times 20 yoke of oxen. And Ogma took it up and hurled it through the house so that it lay on the outside of Chawer, as a challenge to Lugh. But Lugh hurled it back again and lay in the middle of the king's house. He played harp for them then, and he had them laughing and crying till he put them asleep at the end of a sleepy tune. And when Lugh saw all these things that Lugh could do, he began to think that by his help the country might get free of the taxes and the tyranny put on them by the former. And it is what he did. He came down from his throne, and he put Lugh on it in his place, for the length of 13 days, that they might listen to the advice that he would give. Now this is the story of the birth of Lugh. The time the former used to be coming to Ireland, Balor of the Strong Blows, or as some called him, of the Evil Eye, was living on the island of the Tower of Glass. There was danger for ships that went near that island, for the former would come out and take them. And some say the sons of Nevid, in the old time, before the Firbolg were in Ireland, passed near it in their ships, and what they saw was a tower of glass in the middle of the sea, and on the tower something that had the appearance of men, and they went against it with druid spells to attack it, and the former worked against them with druid spells of their own. And the sons of Nevid attacked the tower, and it vanished, and they thought it was destroyed. But a great wave rose over them then, and all their ships went down, and all that were with them. And the tower was there as it was before, and Balor living in it. And it's the reason he was called of the Evil Eye. There was a power of death in one of his eyes, so that no person could look at it and live. It is the way it got that power. He was passing one time by a house where his father's druids were making spells of death, and the window being open, looked in. And the smoke of the poisonous spells was rising up, and it went into his eye. And from that time he had to keep it closed, unless he wanted to be the death of some enemy. And then the men that were with him would lift the eyelid with a ring of ivory. Now a druid foretold one time that it was by his own grandson he would get his death. And he had at that time but one child, a daughter whose name was Evan. And when he heard what the druid said, he shut her up in the tower on the island. And he put 12 women with her, to take charge of her, and to guard her. And he bade them to never let her see a man, nor hear the name of a man. So Evan was brought up in the tower, and she grew to be very beautiful. And sometimes she would see men passing in their coracles, and sometimes she would see a man in her dreams. But when she would speak of that to the women, they would give her no answer. So there was no fear on Balor, and he went on with war and robbery as he was used to, seizing every ship that passed by, and sometimes going over to Ireland to do destruction there. Now it chanced at the time that there were 3 brothers of the Tuatha living together in a place that was called Druim Chenya, the Ridge of the Fire. Goevneu and Sauchain and Cian were the brothers. Cian was the lord of the land, and Goevneu was the smith that had such a great name. Now Cian had a wonderful cow, the glass Gevnin, and her milk never failed. And every one that heard of her coveted her, and many tried to steal her away, so that she had to be watched night and day. And one time Cian was wanting some swords made, and he went to Goevneu's forge, and he brought the glass Gevnian with him, holding her by a halter. When he came to the forge, his two brothers were there together, for Sauchain had brought some steel to have weapons made for himself, and Cian bade Sauchain to hold the halter while he went into the forge to speak with Goevneu. Now Balor had set his mind for a long time on the glass Gevnin, but he had never been able to get near her up to this time. And so he was watching not far off, and when he saw Sauchain holding the cow, he put on the appearance of a little boy having red hair, and came up to him and told him he'd heard his two brothers were in the forge, saying to one another that they would use all his steel for their own swords, and make his of iron. "By my word," said Sauchain, "they will not deceive me so easily. Let you hold the cow, little lad," he said, "and I will go in to them." With that he rushed into the forge, with great anger on him. And no sooner did Balor get the halter in his own hand than he set out, dragging Glass along with him, to the strand, and across the sea to his own island. When Cian saw his brother coming in, he rushed out, and there saw Balor and the glass out at sea. And he had nothing to do then but to reproach his brother, and to wander about as if his wits had left him, not knowing which way to go to get his cow back from Balor. At last he went to a druid to ask an advice from him, and this is what the druid told him: that so long as Balor lived, the cow would never be brought back, for no one could go within reach of his evil eye. Cian went then to a woman druid, Barag of the mountain, for her help, and she dressed him in a woman's clothes, and brought him across the sea in a blast of wind to the tower where Evan was. Then she called to the women in the tower, and asked them for shelter for a high queen she was after saving from some hardship. And the women in the tower did not like to refuse a woman of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and they let her in, and her comrade also. Then Barag by her enchantments put them all into a deep sleep, and Cian went in to speak with Evan. And when she saw him, she said that was the face she had seen in her dreams. So she gave him her love, but after a while he was brought away again on a blast of wind. And when her time came, Evan gave birth to a son. And when Balor knew that, he bade his people put the child in a cloth and fasten it with a pin, and throw him into a current of the sea. And as they were carrying the child across an arm of the sea, the pin dropped out, and the child slipped from the cloth into the water, and they thought he was drowned. But he was brought away by Barag of the mountain, and she brought him to his father Cian, and he gave him to be fostered by Taibhsear, the daughter of the king of the great plain. It is thus that Lugh was born and reared. And some say Balor came and struck the head off Cian on a white stone that has the blood marks on it to this day. But it's likely that it was some other man he struck the head off of, for it was by the sons of Terran that Cian came to his death. And after Lugh had come to Chower, he made his mind up to join with his father's people against the Fomor. He put his mind to the work, and he went to a quiet place in Grelach where Nua and the Dada, and with Agma, and with Goevneu, and with Dian Keet, were called to them there. A full year they stopped there, making their plans together in secret, the way the former would not know what they were doing to rise against them until such a time as they would be ready, until they would know what their strength was. And it is from that council that the place got its name afterwards, the Whisper of the Men of Dia. And they broke up the council and agreed to meet again that day, 3 years. And every one of them went his own way, and Lugh went back to his own friends, the sons of Manannan. And it was a good while after that Nuah was holding a great assembly of the people of the hill of Uzniak, on the west side of Chawer. And they were not long there before they saw an armed troop coming towards them from the east over the plain. And there was a young man in the front of the troop, in command over the rest. And the brightness of his face was like the setting sun, so that they were not able to look at him because of its brightness. And when he came nearer, they saw that it was Lulamfara of the Long Hand, that he had come back to them, and along with him were the riders of the She from the land of the promise, and his own foster brothers, the sons of Manannan, the White Flower, the Blue-Eyed Spear, the Red Ring, and the Red-Brown Hair. And it was this way Lugh was. He had Manannan's horse of the one mane under him, that was as swift as the naked cold wind of spring. And the sea was the same as the dry land to her, and the rider was never killed off of her back. And he had Manannan's breastplate with him, that kept whomever was wearing it from wounds, and a helmet on his head, with 2 beautiful precious stones set in the front of it, and 1 in the back. And when he took it off, his forehead was like the sun on a dry summer day. And he had Manannan's sword, Fragarok, the Answerer, at his side. And no one that was wounded by it would ever get away alive. And when that sword was bared in battle, no man that saw it coming against him had any more strength than a woman in childbirth. And the troop came to where the king of Ireland was with the Tuatha, and they welcomed one another. And they were not long there until they saw a surly, slovenly troop coming towards them, 9 times 9 of the messengers of the Fomor, that were coming to ask rent and taxes from the men of Ireland. And the names of the 4 that were the hardest and the most cruel were Enya, and Ethpha, and Coran, and Campar. And there was such great dread of these 4 on the Tuatha, that not one of them would so much as punish his own son or foster son without leave from them. They came up to where the king of Ireland was, and the riders of the She. And the king and all the Tuatha stood up before them. And Lugh of the Long Hand said, "Why do you rise up before that surly, slovenly troop, when you did not rise up before us?" "It's needful for us to do it," said the king. "For if there was but a child of us sitting before them, they would not think that too small a cause for killing him." "By my word," said Lugh, "there is a great desire coming on me to kill themselves." "That is a thing that would bring harm on us," said the king, "for we would meet our own death and destruction through it." "It's a long time you've been under this oppression," said Lugh. And with that he started up and made an attack on the Fomor, killing and wounded them, till he had made an end, 8 nines of them. But he let the last 9 go under the protection of Nuah the king. "And I would kill you along with the others," he said, "but I would sooner see you go with messages to your own country than my own people, for fear they might get any ill treatment." So the 9 went back then till they came to Lachlan, where the men of the Fomor were, and they told them the story from the beginning to the end, and how a young well-featured lad had come into Ireland and had killed all the tax-gatherers but themselves. "And it is the reason he let us off," they said, "that we might tell you the story ourselves." "Do you know who this young man is?" said Balor of the Evil Eye. "I know very well," said Caitlin, his wife. "He's the son of your daughter and mine, and it was foretold," she said, "that from the time he would come into Ireland we would never have power there again forever." Then the chief men of the Fomor went into a council, and it was just at the time Bresh and his father, Elalan, were to come up to ask help of the Fomor. And Bresh said, "I myself will go to Ireland, and 7 great battalions of the riders of the Fomor along with me, and I will give battle to this Eldonach, this master of the arts, and I will strike off his head and bring it here to you, to the green of Burva." "It would be a fitting thing for you to do," said they all. "Let my ships then be made ready for me," said Bresh, "and let food and provisions be put into them." So they made no delay, but went and got the ships ready. And they put plenty of food and drink in them. And the 2 swift Lughs were sent out to gather the army to Bresh. And when they were all gathered, they made ready their armor and their weapons, and they set out for Ireland. And Balor the king followed them into the harbor, and he said, "Give battle to that Eldonach, and strike off his head, and tie that island that is called Ireland to the back of your ships, and let the destroying water take its place, and put it on the north side of Lachlan, and that no one of the men of Dea will follow it there, to the end of life and to the end of time." Then they pushed out their ships, and put up their painted sails, and went out from the harbor to the untilled country on the ridges of the wide-lying sea. And they never returned from their course till they came to the harbor of Ishtara. And from that they set out an army through West Connacht, and destroyed it altogether, through and through. And the king of Connacht at that time was Boderug, son of the Dagda. The Coming of Lugh, from Gods and Fighting Men by Lady Gregory, 1904, Part 1, Book 2. A human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects. Robert Heinlein in Time Enough for Love as Lazarus Long. Lugh the Long Hand was a man and a god of many talents. As Robert Heinlein's character Lazarus reminds us, human beings are born and bred for diversity. Narrow fields of specialization are not only the easy way out, they're also potentially dangerous. The more you specialize, the more at risk you are when your specialty is no longer in demand. When walking the way of the Taibhsear, a true warrior knows the ways of all the arts and prospers by them. In the story of the coming of Lugh, being skilled at only one art was not enough to gain Lugh passage into Chower, but mastering all the arts was. There's a saying that in our current education system, that teaches towards degrees in one specialty or another, one knows more and more about less and less until one day he knows absolutely everything about absolutely nothing. The beginning of the tale of the coming of Lugh reminds us that diversity is the key to survival and prosperity. The more skills and talents we have, the more likely we are to achieve success. From this perspective, learning is always a good thing. In our current society, there's a tendency to glorify ignorance and to denigrate education and learning. This is not the way of the Taibhsear. Our order always seeks knowledge and the wisdom that comes through applying that knowledge to all skills. In our story, when Lugh is granted admission to the court of Chower, he is offered the seat of knowledge at the king's table. This was a seat reserved for the king's most trusted and learned advisor. In ancient times, it was usually held by a bard, and this person was probably always a druid. This is the seat that Merlin held in the Arthurian legends. Such an advisor would be skilled in all the arts of the druid. This advisor would be well versed in Breyan law, in poetry, prose, and divination, and in the healing arts. Lugh met all of those qualifications and more, and was worthy of the seat of knowledge. The fourth sacred pillar of the order of the Taibhsear is growth in mind, body, spirit, and emotion. Lugh was sound of mind, as his skill at chess demonstrated. He was sound of body, as his skills as a champion indicated. He was skilled in matters of the spirit, as his talents as a magician and a healer indicated. And he had mastered the emotions, as his skill at poetry and at the harp indicated. He was a master of all of the arts. As you seek the way of the Taibhsear, what skills do you possess that would lead you to grow mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally? What challenges do you have in these areas? After listing all of his skills, Lugh gains admittance to Chower by defending all comers at a game of chess. The game referred to here is not really chess. Lady Gregory was simply calling it chess so as not to confuse a modern audience. The game here is Ficil. It's an ancient Celtic board game that was a predecessor for chess. The name Ficil means wood wisdom. This could refer to the material the board was made of, but given its association with the Druids, the name of the game may have a deeper meaning. The grave of the Druid of Colchester, unearthed in 1996, contained what may have been a Ficil set. The game is often mentioned in Celtic lore in association with the Druids, so it was probably a favorite among the Druid caste. If that's the case, then the name Wood Wisdom could be some sort of pun or variation on the word Druid. This is because one possible interpretation of the word Druid is Wise Ones of the Oak. The legends describe Fitchel as a game played by royalty and by the gods. In some legends, it was invented by Lugh, so it's natural that he should be the best at the game. Little is known today about the rules of the game, even though it's mentioned quite frequently in the lore of the British Isles. What is known for certain is that, like chess, the game consisted of two opposing armies, and each of these armies probably had a king in play at some point in the game. As described in the legends, Fitchel also had a mystical aspect to it, and the winning or losing of a game could determine the outcome of a real battle at a future date. When Lugh demonstrates his prowess on the Fitchel board, he's showing more than just a talent for playing games. He's demonstrating a gift for strategy, mysticism, and divination. It's interesting that the object of the game is to conquer your opponent's army, given the events that transpire between Nua and Lugh afterwards in the story. Just as Lugh wins the Fitchel games, he later wins Nua's throne. Upon gaining admittance to Chaur, Lugh is immediately put to the test by Nua's brother Ogma. Ogma was the champion of Chaur. He was the war chief of the kingdom. His challenge to Lugh is that he picks up a flagstone that could hardly be moved by 80 yoke of oxen and tosses it out of Chaur. Lugh's response is to immediately toss it back into the fortress so that it lands in the center of the king's house. The obvious meaning of this challenge is that both men were demonstrating feats of strength. Ogma challenges Lugh, demonstrating his own strength by tossing a huge stone, then Lugh responds by tossing it back. There's also, however, a possible deeper meaning to this challenge. In Irish legend, the Stone of Fall was a stone that was said to cry out when the rightful king sat upon it. Liber Gabála, or the Book of the Takings of Ireland, describes the Tuatha Dé Danann as having come to Erin, or Ireland, from the northern islands of the world, where they learned the magic arts before migrating to Ireland. According to the Liber Gabála, the Tuatha Dé Danann brought the stone with them when they migrated. It was then placed in the fortress of Tara. Chaur is the ancient name for Tara, so it's safe to assume that the Stone of Fall is the stone in question in this story. So what does it mean that Ogma tosses the stone out of the fortress at Tara, and Lugh tosses it back, causing it to land at the center of the king's house? The stone is a symbol of authority of the king, and that it cries out when the rightful king sits upon it. Later in the story, Nua relinquishes his throne to Lugh for 13 days in order to see what advice Lugh might give for dealing with the Fomor. Could it be that Ogma, brother to the king and the champion of the court of Chaur, tosses the stone out to prevent Lugh from usurping his brother? Could it also be that when Lugh tosses the stone back, having it land in the center of the king's house, he's asserting his authority over the throne? The Stone of Fall is also a symbol of the Hieros Gamos, in which the king is wedded to the land. The stone is a symbol of the earth goddess. The Stone of Fall cries out when the rightful king sits upon it, indicating the earth goddess's acceptance of and union to the king. As long as the king is accepted by the goddess, then as the king prospers, the land prospers, and as the king suffers, the land suffers. The Stone of Fall reminds us that the land and the king are one. This is the idea of sovereignty from a Celtic and Druidic perspective, that a king may not prosper unless he has the blessings of the goddess. And the way to earn the blessings of the goddess is to honor the land and all living things. In the way of the Taibhsear, we recognize that no ruler or leader can truly be great unless he or she honors the goddess by honoring the land. We're all connected to the earth, and if a leader refuses to honor that connection to the earth, then that leader does not serve the people, and that leader should be removed from the throne. If we continue to dishonor the goddess by supporting leaders who do not honor her, then the goddess will not bless us and the land will not prosper. It's interesting that the war chief of Chaur was the one who tossed the symbol of the goddess out of the king's hall, and Lugh, the sun god, was the one who restored it to its rightful place. Could the lesson here be that war, simply for the sake of war, dishonors the goddess? The next skill Lugh demonstrates for the people of Chaur is his talent with the harp. The three skills of a bard on the harp were to be able to make an audience laugh, to make the audience cry, and to make the audience sleep. Lugh demonstrates all three of these skills for the court, thus demonstrating himself to be a master bard, and possibly a druid. It was after this performance on the harp that Nua decided to give Lugh the throne for 13 days to see how he would handle the former. Note that there were three skills that Lugh displayed that led him to the throne. The first, his ability on the fichel board, was a skill of mind. Next, his feat of strength with the Stone of Fall was a skill of the body. The final skill, his musical gifts on the harp, was a skill of the spirit. So in order to gain the throne, Lugh had to be talented in mind, body, and spirit. As you seek the way of the Taibhsear, what skills of mind might you possess that would gain you entrance to the halls of power? What physical skills do you possess that would allow you to overcome adversaries and to claim sovereignty, uniting yourself with the land and with the goddess? What talents of the spirit do you have that might help you to master your own emotions and the passions of others? Ponder these questions until next week, when we will explore the birth of Lugh in greater detail. The Green Corner. Sustainable transportation. Before humankind invented any sort of mechanized transportation, before we learned to harness the energy of our four-legged neighbors, we learned to get from one place to another in an upright stance on two legs. As time and technology progressed, we found other ways of getting from one place to another. These technologies have allowed us to cover greater distances in shorter amounts of time, but sometimes I think we rely too heavily on them. Have we forgotten the simple joys of a brisk morning walk? Given the obesity epidemic in the country right now, we could all probably use a little more time in our walking shoes. A nice walkabout can clear the mind and invigorate the body, and it's a great way to get to know the local nature. One of the greatest advantages of walking is it doesn't require any special skills. Anyone over the age of 2 who isn't handicapped in some way can do it. You don't need a license. You don't need any special equipment. You might want to buy some good walking shoes if you plan to walk on gravel or over long distances, but otherwise you're set to go. Walking may be a bit more time-consuming than just hopping into the car for that little jaunt down to the convenience store. With a little scheduling and time management, you can fit it into your daily routine. Besides, if you find time to walk a little more, you might be able to skip a day or two at the gym. If you're not going to the gym or exercising in any other way, then the extra time you spend walking might actually add some more time to your lifespan. And of course, more time spent walking means less time spent in an automobile, burning fossil fuels and contributing to greenhouse gases. Many urban and suburban planners are now taking pedestrian traffic into consideration when they make their designs, and they're planning accordingly. If you're lucky enough to live in such a community, taking advantage of the amenities designed for foot traffic could be the greenest and most sustainable method of transportation there is for short distances. Plus, getting outdoors is good for you. So enjoy the sunshine.
I never felt the spirit in temples made by men, but the forest called to me as a child. I tried to understand it, to follow where you led, but I only felt at home there in the wild. For a long time I pretended to go where you had gone, to try to make you happy with your choice. But I soon grew tired of make-believe when the goddess called to me. There in the woods I found her voice. You have your own path, but I went another way. The door is open from my side. The choice is yours. We can agree to disagree. You don't have to run and hide. Hate the sin but love the sinner. That's what I've heard you say, to justify the closing of your doors. But when it comes to hating, this is what you need to know. The hating is your God's job and not yours. I know our paths are different, and we both have different ways, but the pathway doesn't matter in the end. If you can set aside your judgments, I'll try to do the same, because I know we both could use a friend. You have your own path, but I went another way. The door is open from my side. The choice is yours. We can agree to disagree. You don't have to run and hide. You seek wisdom in the one God, and I find wisdom in them all. In the end, I think we both shall seek the light. You chose to shut me out because you think that I am wrong, but self-righteousness just doesn't make you right. You turned your back on me because I went another way. Your decision's your loss and not mine. I'll be waiting patiently if you ever change your mind. In the meantime, me and mine are doing fine. You have your own path, but I went another way. The door is open from my side. The choice is yours. We can agree to disagree. You don't have to run and hide. You have your own path, but I went another way. The door is open from my side. The choice is yours. We can agree to disagree. You don't have to run and hide. You don't have to run and hide.
In the Way of the Taibhsear, we use the Celtic tree alphabet known as the Ogham. In this section of the podcast, we will present one character of the Ogham each week, offering information on the meaning of each letter of the Ogham alphabet, trees associated with each letter, the healing and magical properties of each tree, gods and goddesses associated with each tree and letter, and the divinatory meanings of each letter of the Ogham. Since we will be discussing medicinal uses of the plants in this segment of the podcast, please remember that herbal medicine requires caution and practice. None of the medicinal uses discussed on the Way of the Taibhsear podcast should be attempted by a novice. Some parts of the plants of the Ogham are poisonous, and people with allergies should also be aware of the potential allergic reactions to plants. If you are interested in herbal medicine, find a skilled practitioner and take lessons. Do not attempt to use medicinal plants without the supervision of an expert.
The letter P of the Ogham alphabet is represented by Ulanth. Its divinatory meaning is attraction, enchantment, and binding. The associated plant is the honeysuckle. Honeysuckle blossoms produce a very sweet sap that has the ability to purge toxins from the blood and the liver. A tea made of honeysuckle blossoms contains tannins that soothe the sore throat and ease fever symptoms. Make a balm with honeysuckle sap and apply it to skin rashes or mild burns. A note of caution here. Honeysuckle leaves contain toxins, and if ingested, the leaves could be poisonous, especially to small children. So use care when making any kind of decoctions with honeysuckle. The flowers of the honeysuckle can be made into a balm to reduce inflammation and swelling. This balm may also ease the pain of arthritis. Magical uses. Ostara's temple was said to be covered with honeysuckle. As such, it is a symbol of new life, new beginnings, and rebirth. Any part of this plant would be helpful in any magic involved with starting over. To protect your home and garden from negative energies, plant honeysuckle near your door. If honeysuckle grows over the lintels of your door, it will protect all who dwell within from fevers. Honeysuckle clings tenaciously to anything it grows on. For this reason, it can be used in powerful love magic. It's often used at hand fastings and weddings for this reason. Honeysuckle may also be used to ensure fidelity between romantic partners.
or in divination where infidelity is suspected. Honeysuckle's magical powers involve the realm of psychic magic. Weave a dream catcher of honeysuckle to chase away nightmares. A charm of honeysuckle worn about the wrist or neck improves the intuitive abilities of the one who wears it. Honeysuckle blossoms are used to attract money or financial success. An incense made of honeysuckle and burned on your family's altar will aid you in achieving prosperity and security. Gods and goddesses associated with honeysuckle are Gwydion, Jadine, and Ostara. Listening to the Way of the Taibhsear podcast on International Pagan Radio, where it's all pagan all the time. This has been episode 27, The Coming of Lugh. Music on this episode featured The Tree at the Center by Shenka the Vate from the album Forest Echoes, and I Went Another Way from the upcoming album Winter of the Wheel, due out in October of this year, also by Shenka the Vate. The Way of the Taibhsear is the official podcast of the Order of the Taibhsear. You can learn more about us at taibhsear.com. That's TAIBHSEAR.com. The Way of the Taibhsear is a podcast about Druidry and paganism as practiced by the Order of the Taibhsear. Paganism is a wide and diverse community, and we don't claim to speak for all pagans. You can get in touch with us at the show at podcast@taibhsear.com. That's podcast@TAIBHSEAR.com. The Way of the Taibhsear is sponsored by Elder Grove Seminary, offering the best in pagan education with online bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in ministry and divinity. Learn more about Elder Grove Seminary at eldergrove.org. Until next time, blessings of the ancestors.